The Man with the Yin-Yang Eyes, Episode 3. It's me again, a guy who looks nothing special but turns out to have yin-yang eyes that can see ghosts. I'm Lucius Gregory, you guys remember me, right? Since the ghost girl was murdered last time, it's been a long time since I last saw you. I thought it was okay after that, who knows? Well, let me tell you a story related to these annoying evil eyes. About 2 weeks ago, one night, I came home from work as usual. I don't know why that day, but I was inspired to take a different path than usual. Everything was fine until I passed an alley when I had a strange feeling. It was as if it was constantly urging me to take off the glasses on my eyes. I couldn't resist the hateful feeling, so I reached up and took down my glasses. As soon as I took off my glasses, I saw a strange man. It turned out that I came again. I accidentally re-encountered ghosts. But when I regained my senses and looked closely, I discovered that this man was quite strange. He looked completely different from the ghosts I had seen before. The man in front of my eyes at that time was like a lump of black coal. His whole body was black. I looked at him for a moment and guessed that he was most likely burned to death, so he was black as coal. I stared at him for a moment. After standing in the alley for a while, he turned and walked towards the main road. I was still standing there and staring at that burned-out ghost. He's getting closer and closer to me. I could see him clearly, but of course, he couldn't see me. He just kept walking straight past me. Somehow, as soon as this ghost left, my nose picked up the faint burning smell on him, but when I smelled it again, there was no burning smell at all. Maybe the burning smell I smelled earlier was due to a psychological effect, or it could be that the smell was just faint and then dissipated. I used to hate trouble. Although it is normal, sometimes I still take off my glasses to see the ghosts wandering around. Still, most of the time I choose to just look at them for a while and then put them back on and ignore them. But sometimes there is the exception, like the ghost girl in front of the police station last time, or like this charred man. Maybe part of his strange form makes me quite curious. That's why this time I didn't ignore him, I followed him. I wanted to see where this charred ghost wanted to go and do. The charred man kept going and going until he came to a rather large but seemingly deserted restaurant lying on the street and stopped. I thought about what he would do, but no, the ghost just stopped and looked at the bar for a while, maybe half an hour. Half an hour later, he turned around again and went to another large restaurant on the opposite side. This restaurant is much more spacious than the previous one, different from the top 5, the top 3 coming in and out are also much busier. The ghost kept watching until the customers in the restaurant left. I don't know what he wants to do. While I was thinking about it, I saw his body suddenly light up. The charred man was standing staring at the diner, and his body was starting to burn. There were also a few people passing by at this time, but they all seemed to be unaware of this man's existence. The ghost's body burned more and more fiercely. Crimson flames enveloped the charred body. Then suddenly, he put his hand on the wall of that restaurant, and the fire on his body spread to the wall that looked solid. When I saw that, I panicked a bit, about to go up and call for help, when I caught a glimpse of 2 people running out from inside the restaurant. Looking at their appearances like the owner and the waiter, those 2 quickly ran out and saw the burning wall. They panicked. Then I saw them rush into the store, bring out large buckets of water, and start slamming against the wall to put out the fire. Who burned it like this? Why is a brick wall like this so easy to burn? I don't know who we've offended, but 5 times 7 times. Even though I was standing some distance away, I could still hear the angry voice of the waiter. From the tone of his voice, it seemed like this had happened many times. I don't know, it's frustrating. The owner of the restaurant followed the waiter's words. The fire on the wall was basically extinguished, but this time something else happened. The other ghost, who was standing behind the two of them, suddenly extended a flaming hand towards the inn's owner. But the ghost's flaming hand could only penetrate the innkeeper's body without causing any harm to him, different from just a little touch that set the wall on fire a few minutes ago. It seemed that the innkeeper felt something. I saw him turn his head and look around a few times. When he turned his head, it seemed that the innkeeper couldn't see the ghost either. But he saw me and looked at me. The bartender gave me a suspicious look a few times, then turned around and pulled something from the inside of his shirt. Because it was blocked from view, I didn't know what it was. After that, I saw the ghost with a burning body gradually disappearing. Although I don't know what the shop owner just took out from his shirt, it seems that it can ward off evil spirits, and that innkeeper knows the existence of that ghost. After the ghost disappeared, the owner and the waiter also left and went inside the restaurant. I stood there and watched the two's backs until they were gone. I looked at that restaurant for a while, then looked at the restaurant opposite. My heart fluttered a little, and my hunch told me there was something wrong with this and that the restaurant in front of me might have something to do with the man who burned to death earlier. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to step inside the restaurant. Perhaps because it was too late, the restaurant had no customers, only the old owner was cleaning the tables and chairs. It seemed he was about to clean up. "Oh, my shop has not been cleaned yet. Please come in." Perhaps because I hesitated for a long time without entering, the owner thought I was afraid because the shop was about to move, so he happily asked me to come in. "What would you like to use?" Maybe give me a small bowl of noodles." The owner happily approached me and asked what I wanted to eat. To be honest, I just had dinner earlier, so I was pretty full, so I just ordered a small bowl of noodles. One came here just to see if I could find out something. "Oh, wait a minute, here it is. For a small bowl of noodles." As soon as I ordered the food, the owner turned and shouted into the kitchen for the chef to make a small bowl of noodles. This restaurant looks quite new. Did the owner just renovate it? Oh yes, this restaurant has only been open for a few months, so it is still quite empty. While waiting for the noodles, I tried to find a topic to talk to the owner, ready to search to see if I could discover anything. The owner said this shop just opened recently. But looking at the ghost appearance just now seemed very familiar to this place. Opening a restaurant as big as this must be quite expensive, boss. Fortunately, this land used to be a restaurant, then for some reason, it burned down. The relatives of the former owner here were afraid of bad luck after taking over the place, so they sold this place to me for a rather low price. The owner heard my question and started telling me what happened earlier at this restaurant. The owner is a very enthusiastic person, lucky indeed. The restaurant owner said that the previous owner of this place was a man from the south who came to the north to do business. His family had 3 people. They lived together very happily. He cooks very well and has a business mind, so their family opened a restaurant in their own house. The restaurant is doing very well. Everyone loved the food at that family's diner. But unfortunately, while the restaurant was doing exceptionally well, disaster struck that family. The boss said that everyone is not sure if it was intentional or just an accident. The results of the investigation have been negative, drifting into the sea. One night, while the family was all asleep, a fire broke out inside the house of 3 people, which is also the restaurant where I was eating. The fire was so intense that it swallowed the whole house. 3 family members did not have time to call for help and were burned to death in the fire, buried in the sea of fire. When the people around were able to put out the fire, they saw 3 charred corpses hugging each other. Everyone there who saw that scene felt pity. The owner told me that for a while after that, the other relative put this place for sale for a reasonable price, but absolutely no one dared to buy it until he bought the shop and made an offering. Carefully then rebuild and continue to open the restaurant. That's the whole story of this place, young man. Now that I opened this shop, business is quite good. Sometimes there are some strange things, but if you pray carefully, it's okay. After hearing the story, I was sure that the family of the other three was harmed. The bowl of hot noodles was brought out. I ate while thinking. Soon the bowl of noodles found the bottom. After I finished eating, I decided to send a message to Officer Lee, who was known in the previous Ghost Girl case, to clarify this case. The text that was sent gave a brief account of what I had seen, heard, and my suspicions about the restaurant owner across the street. I read it again before sending the message, then hit the send button. Immediately after receiving my message, Officer Lee went to the suspicious restaurant and arrested the restaurant owner for questioning. But no matter how soft or hard he used, he didn't say a word. If it's past 48 hours, he'll have to be released. You see, I've tried all sorts of ways, and that guy won't say anything. Officer Lee walked out of the interrogation room and spoke in a somewhat weak voice. This kind of stubborn crime, like a dead pig, really gives people a headache. I will find someone to come help. Let's see if he can still shut up. Remain calm. The net is magnificent. Although it is difficult to escape, don't be too angry. While Officer Lee was worried about me, I picked up the phone and dialed Mr. Simmons. Mr. Simmons is the same guy who made me these special black glasses. Mr. Simmons, right? I would like to ask you for a little help. There is a case, and the police have a little difficulty in the investigation process. Mr. Simmons quietly listened to me detail this case over the phone. As soon as I finished, he happily agreed. Mr. Simmons came and handed me a box that looked like an ointment. He has a necklace with a Buddha talisman on it, and you should try to apply this on the card. After talking and listening to Mr. Simmons gave instructions, I hung up the phone, went to Officer Lee, and gave it to him, telling him to be careful. Okay, let me take care of that damn criminal. It seems that after Officer Lee learned that there was a way to get the other man to confess, he was very excited. Officer Lee hurried into the police station, and I went to the police station's back to meet Mr. Simmons. Mr. Simmons, you can start now. Mr. Simmons had been waiting at the rendezvous place for a long time. Our position was at the back of the room, where they interrogated the criminal. Okay, it'll be over soon, you go back for a bit. Mr. Simmons told me to stay away for a bit. Then I saw him bite his finger a little bit, and blood came out from the tip of his finger. Then I saw Mr. Simmons drew something on the wall with his blood-stained finger, mumbling a little while drawing. Okay, now you can go inside to see the situation. As soon as he finished drawing something on the wall with his blood, Mr. Simmons asked me to go in and see what was going on in the interrogation room, so that the policeman could say a few words and call him out. I went to the interrogation room and did as Mr. Simmons. I'll let Officer Lee say a few more words and then call him out and leave the other man alone inside. Oh, the murderer believes in Buddha? Officer Lee looked at the Buddha card and raised his voice to provoke the man, who remained silent and did not utter a word. Tisk tisk, I believe in Buddha too. It is said that if a person does evil, there will be no Buddha to help him. Inside the interrogation room, Officer Lee held a Buddha card that was worn around the man's neck and stroking it with his finger. On Police Lee's finger was an ointment made by Mr. Simmons gave it earlier. Great public announcement. If I say it out loud, it's a little more pleasing to the eye. Before going out, Officer Lee still tried to add a sentence, but the man was still as dumb as a mussel. Officer Lee went out and closed the interrogation room door, then lit a cigarette. I looked inside the interrogation room and took off my glasses. Not long after, indeed, the burned-out man appeared and stood behind the criminal. This is the ghost that I asked Mr. Simmons helps make him manifest again. At this point, it seems the criminal also sensed the burned man. That is probably because Mr. Simmons put his hand on the ointment. I saw the criminal trembling. The criminal wanted to dodge as the burned-out man dived towards him with his body ablaze. But the small interrogation room had nowhere to hide. He quickly felt the heat of the fire. "Help me." The criminal inside the interrogation room was quickly hurt by the burning sensation of fire all over his body. He kept crying and crying for help. I told all. I burned the place and killed them. Forgive me, forgive me." In the end, he couldn't take it anymore, so he shouted his confession. He claimed that he burned the restaurant and killed all 3 of them because he was afraid they would take all his guests. "Mr. Simmons, it's all over." I called Mr. Simmons and reported the situation here. "Okay, you and Mr. Simmons go home and rest. We'll take care of the rest here." After I hung up, Officer Lee looked back at me and told me to go home and rest. Did everything go well? I went to the back of the police station. Mr. Simmons was still waiting there. As he sees me come back, he asked me about the course of things. "It's all fine. That guy confessed, the ghost also disappeared." I told him briefly the whole incident earlier. "It's good now. That burned-out man has fulfilled his wish and can be reincarnated. Come back with me for a while." Mr. Simmons smiled and mumbled a few words and then told me to go home. "I heard that last time you helped the witch to fulfill her wish. This time you helped the family of the other 3 regain justice. What a good deed. Your ability can help a lot of people, so keep it up." Along the way, Mr. Simmons always talks about my yin-yang eyes.